everyone, my name is Scruffy. After plenty of research and preparing our written guides, I am happy to present you today the next guide for the War Within Season 1, the Stonevault. As long as you see this video, we can ensure that it is up to date. If there are any changes or updates to this dungeon, we will make sure to either add some remarks in the comments or completely re-upload this video if needed. You can already find our early guides for classes, dungeons and professions on your MMO. And without further ado, let me explain to you the Stonevault. All dungeons from the War Within are segmented for the respective boss. In Area 1, you will find 4 different trash mobs. You encounter these in various combinations until you reach the first boss. First enemies are the earth-infused golems. They use ground pound, which deals damage and slows players within 30 yards. The seismic wave is a frontal cone in the direction of a random player. Curse Hut Invader attack the tank with arcing void, which deals damage to them and then arcs over to 3 more players to also deal damage to them. Void Infection is a debuff applied to a random player, which deals damage over time but can be dispelled. Ghastly Void Soul need your attention. Howling Fear will, obviously, fear players if not interrupted. And last, Repurposed Loader Bot use Pulverizing Pounce, which makes them leap on the location of a random player and deal damage on impact. This is indicated by the typical brown swirl on the floor. Edna, or EDNA, is the first boss you have to encounter in the Stonevault. Over the course of the fight, Edna will spawn more and more volatile spikes. These have a red circle around them, indicating that they will explode if you walk into them. This destroys them, but it will deal group-wide damage and even more damage to players that step into them. The goal of this fight is actually to destroy them in a controlled fashion. Edna's Earth Shatter will destroy all remaining volatile spikes, which could become deadly if not enough of them were destroyed. In order to destroy them, players can either use immunities like Rogues or Hunter, or Edna's Refracting Beam ability. Up to 3 players are targeted by this beam, indicated by the red arrow going out of the boss. This destroys pillars that are in its path. The beam travels through the player, so you don't have to run away, just aim it in the correct direction. And in the meantime, the boss attacks the tank with Seismic Smash. This deals damage and leaves a dot, and if this dot either expires or is dispelled, the boss gains an Earth Shield for a few seconds, which reduces his damage taken for 25% for 5 seconds. Whenever the healer dispels the debuff from the tank will be receiving the damage reduction. If you as the tank struggle to survive the massive damage from his Seismic Smash, make sure that your healer dispels you just before this damage comes in, so you have an additional layer of defense. From here, you can either choose to go left or right, and you need to defeat both bosses on both sides to unlock the middle door to the final boss. Going to the left, we are on our way to Skarmorak. 5 new enemies are located in this segment. Voidbound Despoiler use Voidstorm, which deals damage to all players during this channel. Also, Defiling Outburst must be interrupted, otherwise it deals damage to all players within 50 yards and increases their damage taken by 25% for 12 seconds. Engine Speakers are just nasty for the tank, because they attack with Concussive Smash, dealing heavy damage and applying a stacking slow debuff on the tank. Voidbound Howler deal AoE damage with Piercing Wail, and each use of Piercing Wail applies an increased damage taken by this ability. Make sure to interrupt as many of them as you can. Turn Speaker's Censoring Gear is a projectile in the direction of a random player, dealing damage to players struck in their path and silencing them for 3 seconds. Void Touch Elemental use Crystal Salvo, dealing damage to nearby players in a close range. The second boss Skarmorak attacks the tank with Crystalline Smash. This deals damage to them and then spawns crystal shards all over the place. Their spawn location deals damage to players struck in the impact zone, indicated by a purple swirly. These crystal shards explode upon death, dealing shadow damage to all players. Each explosion applies a debuff for a few seconds that increases the damage taken of this explosion. Skarmorak will use Reclaim upon reaching 100 energy, granting him an Absorb Shield, which is already pretty large, and even increases for each crystal shard that was still alive during the Reclaim cast. As long as he has the shield, he uses Void Discharge to deal group-wide damage, which increases in intensity over the time. To be able to deal with this Absorb Shield, Skarmorak will use Unstable Crash 2 times before his shield phase. This is an explosion around the boss within 15 yards, dealing damage and then spawning a Void Fragment close to each player's location. Players can walk through this Void Fragment to receive a damage buff against Absorb Shields. This buff can also stack. Make sure to not instantly pick them up and refresh the duration of it by applying the second stack just before he gains the Absorb Shield. This way, you ensure to have the most use of this buff and burst his Absorb Shield quickly. After this boss, you walk back to the middle and then take the path to the right side. On your way to the boss, you will encounter 4 new mobs. Guardian Invader use Void Infection and Arcing Void, similar to previous enemies before the first boss. Aspiring Forge Hand apply Fracture with their auto attacks, causing the current tank to take 5% increased damage for 8 seconds per stack. Forgebot Mender will attack with Alloy Bolt, which could be interrupted, but make sure that your group has enough interrupts available for restoring metals. This spell will heal up one enemy by 20% of its maximum health if not interrupted. Last, Forged Loader's Lava Cannon is also going to be a boss mechanic, so be aware. Lava Cannon is a projectile in the direction of a random player, which then travels in a direction dealing damage, and applying a damage over time debuff to players struck. Their Molten Mortar ability cannot be avoided and just deals damage to 2 random players. The next encounter consists of 2 bosses, Speaker Brock and Speaker Dorlita. If one of them is killed, the other one will radiate fire damage and deal 75% increased damage, so make sure to kill them both at almost the same time. Speaker Brock activates the ventilation over the course of the fight. This deals damage to players standing close to these vents, and it spews flaming scrap into the room. Those are the lava pools all around in the encounter area. These lava pools can be cleansed if lava explosion from Dorlita is traveling over them. As the lava cannon before, the lava explosion is a similar projectile in the direction of a random player. Make sure to aim it over some void zones. Speaker Dorlita attacks the tank with some nasty damage with Molten Hammer, while Speaker Brock casts Molten Metal on a random player, which can be interrupted. Both bosses have the Scrap Song ability. This ability summons a large metal cube into the room. Speaker Brock rides this metal cube and surges it across the room, so make sure to not stand in its path. Speaker Dorlita pulls her own cube into the middle of the room and makes it explode after a few seconds, so make sure to not stand close to that. After this boss, you can use the minecart to get back into the middle, and you're on your way to the last boss. The last 4 new trash mobs for this dungeon are the following. Curseforge Honor Guard uses Shield Stampede, charging in a random direction indicated by a blue arrow. This stuns players as well if they are struck. Otherwise, they attack the tank with Stonebreaker Strike, which deals heavy damage. Cursed Forge Bender, similar as before, use Alloy Bolt and Restoring Metals. Cursed Forge Stone Shaper attack random players with Stonevault, but their Earthburst totem is more important. Make sure to kill it quick, otherwise it explodes for heavy damage. Last mobs are the Rock Smasher. This guy uses Smash Rock, very creative, on the current tank. Tanks must face this enemy away because it's a frontal cone at first, dealing damage to players in front of it. After it hits, it just knocks all players away within 60 yards. Everyone taking damage by the frontal ability will take more damage from consecutive Rock Smashes. Granite Eruption is indicated by a brown swirl, just make sure to move out of it. Last boss is High Speaker Eirich. Sounds very German, hopefully he doesn't listen to the Forbidden Song. He opens several void rifts. These rifts kill all players instantly if they're getting too close to them. Currently, this is 3 yards. Void Corruption is a debuff on a random player. This deals increasing damage over time until cleared. Move within 15 yards of the Void Rift to clear it. In Mythic, the Void Portals will relocate to a new position as soon as they have absorbed the Void Corruption debuff. Make sure to remember where they are to not get lost whenever you have to cleanse your debuff. Entropic Reckoning creates large circuits around each player, which explode after a short while and leave a large void zone on the floor. Make sure to position this void zone far away from the Void Rifts. And last, a Frontal Cone, Unbridled Void. This inflicts shadow damage to all players in his front arc within 45 yards.